So just a full disclosure to let you guys all know. Welcome to today's session on Microsoft Azure Power Lunch. Today we'll be talking about Azure Integration Services. And before we do that, I wanted to share with you sort of what our agenda is going to be. This is pretty standard. We do service updates, just do a quick review of what's been updated since the last session. We'll talk a little bit about Azure Integration Services today, and if we have some time, we'll do some Q&A, but for sure I'll leave you with some resources for you guys to look at. In terms of Azure updates, there are a few things, and I did this earlier this week, and what you'll see is there have been several updates since I did this earlier this week. Some of the big ones are we're removing Kubernetes 1.7 and 1.8 support for AKS on November 30th. There are a few updates in API management on October 24th. Some of the things there are improved end-to-end tracing with Azure Application Insights, more powerful expressions using the web utility type in your policy expressions. There is Git implementation with that with API management, runs 3 to 5 times faster now. More reliable console training. There was a bug in there that prevented the generation of traces for requests hitting certain policy scopes, so that's been fixed. There's a few GUID and name changes in these 4 services. U.S. government bandwidth data, SQL database, standard load balancer, blob storage. The significance of that is if you have some third-party tools or some custom apps that are actually using names in GUIDs, you might want to be cognizant of that and make some changes there. Something that's pretty exciting is ExpressRoute is now available for Azure DevOps. The significance of that is we've had some customers who typically operate in sort of the government environment, right, or financial services sectors who request or require a private connection that don't go over the public internet. So that's available. More reliability, faster speeds, lower latency, that type of thing. I could hear someone is drinking a drink, so if you don't mind muting, there's a little noise in the background there. Azure Backup is now offers an improved restore experience for Azure VMs. Takes advantage of ARM templates and managed disks. There's a new Azure monitoring and alerting platform, which is supposed to be faster, smarter, and extensible. And then finally, ACI support for managed identity support for ACI. So that's pretty interesting as well. What I wanted to show you guys is just kind of express how fast Azure is updating. So all my updates started, kind of down here, and actually it's even further down here in October 25th. And what you'll see here is there's a few more updates that happened since I created this slide earlier this week. So the point is, take a look at azure.microsoft.com. And go look at the updates that are there, because this thing just keeps running and running and running, and it's good to know these things. Okay. Let's see. All right. So fundamentally, things are changing in the world of integration, and that's because things are. Yeah, we got a lot of noise going on in the background. Thank you. Things are really democratizing, and things are really transforming in the space of integration. And this is all being driven by the need to increase the rate of change of business, which we all know is digital transformation, right? And that's the engagement of our customers, empowerment of employees, transforming our products and services, and optimizing our operations more quickly. in the digital transformation story, integration plays a key role in this journey. So business depends on all kinds of applications, and it's not just applications, it's mission critical applications, and Microsoft Azure is built for these types of workloads. Azure is built for 24/7 operations. Many of our customers today are doing things like critical business-to-business applications or transactions or IoT scenarios where messages are flowing in and out 24/7. There's an opportunity here when you look at the capabilities we have in Azure. Integration services that we have make up what we call Azure Integration Services, and that's available to your customers internally or externally. You can trade with partners. That's a pretty common scenario. The problem today, though, is that integration is actually difficult to do. It's hard to do. So the value is actually lost when it's difficult to integrate, or rather, opportunities are lost when this is hard and things hard to get things done. The Gartner facts show that nearly 2/3 of organizations in 2.5 years will implement some sort of hybrid integration platform, and something that can connect everything that they've got, whether it resides in the cloud or whether it resides in prem in their own data center, whether it's talking to trading partners or whether it's using cloud services like SaaS applications. The fact is, it's going to be a combination of all these things, and a majority of these companies will have implemented some sort of hybrid integration platform, something that can do the job without having to do all the stuff themselves, right? So application integration is really the backbone of digital transformation. And this is how you get agility, and this is how you get time to market and efficiency. So what are some of the integration scenarios? So these are just a few, but four of the common ones are, app to app, business to business, integrating with software as a services, and then IoT scenarios, right? Being able to ingest data from devices, that's becoming prevalent as well. The challenge is that integration is not easy, right? So there's different interfaces with different APIs and different ways to connect, different protocols, different data sources or representations or formats that you got to deal with. It could be service oriented, or it could be distributed or centralized. It could be in a private data center, or it could be in the cloud. All of these are all challenges for connectivity and being able to integrate efficiently. So integration as a platform, integration platform as a service is this. And so it's where the industry has been moving over the last few years. It's actually provides a number of additional benefits besides making integration easier. It adds agility, it adds opportunity to do things like embracing the API economy. And to do this in a flexible way, you'll have to rewire application networks as you build out these integration capabilities to things on premise, to things in the cloud, to SaaS applications. All of these things move organizations towards the ability to transform the business and unlock new opportunities to gain efficiency, right? So providing an API-first platform to help connect SaaS, on-premise, and cloud apps in a flexible and agile manner is enabling digital transformation. So what is IPaaS in Azure? When you think about IPaaS in Azure at Microsoft, when we talk to customers and we talk about integration, these are the primary four components that we hear a lot of. APIs, workflows, messages, and events. And really, these are all components and services in the general Azure estate that are generally available. And so if you look at this is Azure API Management, Logic Apps, Service Bus, and Event Grid, right? That's really what they are. And so what we've done here at Microsoft is actually combine all these general available services to be a more unified platform, if you will. So looking at it through this lens, Azure Integration Services, it sits sort of in the middle, right? So you have messaging, you have APIs, and you have orchestration, all supported by some of these general services in the Azure estate. On the top there, you're integrating between different personas, and the bottom there, you're integrating between different sources, if you will, or systems. But sitting on top of that, also too, you can use several clients to actually get some of that integration power and that agility. Whether it's reporting or whether it's development. Another way to look at this is this way. So if you look on the left, there's multiple personas that might need to do things in a low no-code scenario, trying to do integration in an API-centric format, if you will. Azure Integration Services enables those things and enables rapid development and focusing on business logic, reducing costs, reducing DevOps considerations. It's event-driven, and we totally abstract away the servers, so it makes it really, really easy to go. So when you think about these 4 services or these 4 type of components that are sitting in the middle, I'm going to go through each of these very quickly. One of the core things is Azure Service Bus, right? So many of us have already heard of Azure Service Bus. We have 2 published subscribed technologies in Azure. Event Grid is one of them, and Service Bus is the other. Service Bus is Microsoft's instantiation of enterprise messaging bus, right? So we all know what that is. It's been around for a while. Azure Event Grid is also another pub sub model, if you will. It's a little bit more simpler. It's event-based. It's an event-based model, and allows subscribers to actually subscribe to some interesting event that occurs. And in my mind, the way I kind of look at this is, it's just to divide the 2 up. Service Bus is more enterprise messaging, right? So if I want to send data over through a message, I could do that. Event Grid is more reactive. Some interesting event occurred, and I'm going to react according to that. What's cool about Service Bus is it kind of separates your systems from each other, it decouples them, and it provides some durability in terms of messaging. In Event Grid, it's the ability to manage all the events in one places. And what you see on the left here is today what's being supported in terms of events, and then what can be fired or what can respond to these events on the right. So let's talk about orchestration and automation. The core of that is logic apps, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second. But it's the ability to sort of string together some, steps or processes in a business flow. There's a lot of powerful capabilities in logic apps. Integration with a visual designer. There's so many connectors in there. The platform flexibility. It allows us to wrangle data, message, support B2B and EDI scenarios. There's a whole bunch of connectors in there, and I'll show you that as well. And we are kind of running out of time. So let me kind of just dive into the portal a little bit. So this is my Azure portal. And a few things I wanted to show you about events. So events are being sort of brought up as a first-class citizen now. So what you'll see inside of Azure, you'll see things where events is just hanging off of, in this case here, I pulled up my subscription. So I can actually subscribe to anything that's interesting in my subscription, right? I could also do this with a storage account, and then actually support some of these there's support with using some of these event handlers to actually reply or respond to certain events. Let's jump to logic apps. So I live in St. Louis, and we just finished a developer-focused conference here in St. Louis. And one of the things that we had challenges with is trying to measure or manage, some of the sentiment that's coming across in terms of social media. And so what I've done here is I've actually built a media flow, is what I'm calling it. And I'll open up my Logic App Designer so you can get a sense of it. And what it's doing here is it is responding to when a tweet is posted. And the hashtag that we used this year was hashtag DevUp2018. And it checks Twitter in a frequency of every 3 minutes. I'm also wired up to one of our cognitive services. And what this cognitive service does is it detects the sentiment. And that was pretty important to us because we wanted to understand, our attendees or the people that are following us on social media, are they generally happy or are they, are they not having a good experience, right? And so what I do is I look at that score and I say, if it's greater than 70 in this case, then I want you to repost the tweet. So essentially just get real viral on the tweet, right? If it's not, then I want you to send it to, we have a Slack channel. And I want you to send it to the Slack channel to the organizers so that they could understand, or they could get visibility into who tweeted it and what was tweeted and what was the score, the sentiment score, if you will. And that way, during the conference itself, we could just get alerts off of Slack, which is what we were using, to sort of respond and make adjustments, sort of in a game day fashion. So that's one of the real simple things that we put together. As you can imagine, you can add a whole bunch of different actions to this. And if you look at what is available, I showed you a whole bunch of different connectors that are available right out of the box. So you can wire up these systems. And if there's not a connector in there, you might be able to hit a webhook or a web API method, just using an HTTP connector. Okay. Sometimes you don't want to put that type of power though everywhere, right? So in the hands of your consumers. So sometimes you want to, you want your users or apps to know. You don't want them to know about the messaging platform. You don't want to have them have control over your messages or TTL or other features. And you want to provide a simple portable API experience between messaging services, whether it's Service Bus or Event Grid. So what we have in Azure is this thing called Azure API Management, also another generally available service as well. It allows you to publish APIs safely and connect to backend systems hosted anywhere. Now with API management, it starts off with, developers, right? Or people that are selling or providing these APIs. And then there's also folks that consume those APIs. So in my example, I showed you, us, consuming the APIs of Twitter and consuming the APIs of Slack, right? So these APIs can be hosted anywhere, on or outside of Azure. They're made available to our developers who build first and third-party apps. And all that is abstracted away. All the APIs that we built and we're providing out, they're abstracted away, they're secure, the lifecycle's managed, it's monitored. And then on the consumption side, for those that are consuming our APIs, they're able to discover, learn, get access, get SDKs and samples and those kinds of things. So when you look at it in this lens, API management sits in the middle and basically provides you a developer portal and a gateway so that you can mediate how calls go in and out, and then finally the availability or the ability to publish. Okay, so another thing too is within API management, there are a whole bunch of different policies that you can use. So if you're exposing an API on the backside, you can modify the request coming in. You can modify the request coming out. So you can pretty much change the way the API reacts. What's also cool, what I really like, is the fact that I could do SOAP to REST. So talk about modernizing your services very quickly in the app modernization perspective. Simply point to a SOAP service and it'll translate it to a REST call. There's a lot of capacity metrics. You can auto scale it, so it responds to multiple calls. There's monitoring and metrics, there's analytics, there's B2C integration. There's a developer portal that you can customize. So when you're exposing these APIs to app developers, you can show them, not only how to use it, but you can skin it in a way that's branded to your organization. So let's let me see here. Let's go back to demo here. So I have a API management service that I created, and really it's just create a resource. And if I search for API management, I simply select API management, click create, provide a couple properties like the name of the service, what subscription I'm in, what resource group I want to put my management service in, what location, and those types of things, right? There are a couple different pricing tiers depending on what meets your needs here. I'm just using developer with no SLA. It'll take about, I think, 5 or 10 minutes for the service to stand up. So I won't actually do that right now, but I already have one. And if I went to API Gateway, which is what mine is called, I can go to APIs here. And as you can see, I can add a couple I could add APIs based on these types of specifications. This is where this WSDL here is where you would do sort of a SOAP to REST conversion if you wanted to. But look what's interesting as well is I could bring in APIs from logic apps, API apps, and function apps. Right? I could also bring in using the Open API spec. So if I just specify the API or the URL to the API, I can bring that in. And that's basically what I did here. So in Conference API, if you look at my settings, you can see that I brought in a API that comes from this web service URL, conferenceapi.azurewebsites.net. And it is exposed using the API Gateway 671, which is the instance of my API management service /conference. Okay. So if I look at this and I go back to design, here are the different APIs that I just pulled in, right? So get sessions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I could run these and I could actually see what's happening here. So here in get sessions, for example, let me shrink this. This is what it looks like. So if you look at the arrow flows here on the front end, these things come in, right? And it goes through some sort of inbound processing and eventually hits my API on the backside, and then it comes back out. So what we're trying to illustrate here is that I could add policies to actually modify the inbound processing. I could modify things at the back end, and I could modify things at the outbound processing, so I can actually change how this API looks, right? If I went to test, I can pull up one of these guys and actually do a test on it. So if I hit send, there it is. So I got a 200 response error or response code with took 3.845 milliseconds. I can also version this, right? So I could add a revision to this. And so, for example, if I want to add caching, I can create a version. And what will happen is just right up here, you'll see it turn to revision 2. And I could modify this, let's say get sessions, for example. And I'll add a policy for caching. And I'm not sure why it's hanging, but I could add a policy. Yeah, if someone can mute their line, please. I can add a policy for caching, and then I could switch off between revision 1 and revision 2. So we're right about time, and I wanted to make sure that I provided a few different scenarios where integration services make sense for you guys. So application to application, so being able to talk from one app to another is a very interesting scenario that integration services allows you to do. Business to business is also a cool scenario where you might want to notify some of your business partners on when something happens on your side. This is what I did, and what I showed you is being able to extend and integrate SaaS services, right? So we were using Twitter, we were using Slack to create a workflow, if you will. And then finally, the IoT scenario, organizations innovate using sensors, right? So Azure Integration Services simplifies not only the data collection, but also the exchange from devices to applications and systems on the backside. So let me wrap up. I wanted to leave with you guys a few things that were just announced. Integration services, service environments has been introduced. It's in preview today. And basically what it is it allows you sort of VNet connectivity, right, for your environment, for your integration environment. Very, very similar to app service environments. So it gives you control over IPs and gives you dedicated compute, and there is a flat cost to that because it's dedicated just for your instance, right? So that's in public preview. You can hit this URL to actually go out to be considered. There are a couple new extensions for Logic apps in VS Code. You can go look at that. A few more announcements. In the China region, it's in public preview. What's really interesting is this IBM 3270 terminal connector. So being able to connect a Logic app and being able to do something like screen scrapes off of an IBM 3270 connector is interesting as well. So to wrap up, check out the integration platform as a service at aka.ms/IPaaS. There's a couple reports from Gartner. You can also look up some Azure Essentials on integrating your apps with Azure, and then a white paper with regarding Azure Integration Services. So I apologize, I'm a little bit over. I will stay on the line, but I will cut you guys loose. Thank you, everyone. And I'll stop the recording.